Stock markets perk up on the eve of the interim budget. The sensex and the nifty gain 1%. Bank stocks lead the charge. Mid-cap index hits record highs.
Shares of PB Fintech rally in trade after the company reports its first ever profit. Shares cross the IPO price of 980 rupees for the first time in 2 years since the listing.
Strong earnings coming in from Sun Pharma and positive management commentary from Dr. Reddy's dry pharma stocks higher. Nearly 90% of the pharma stocks clock gains today. Hello and welcome to Markets Today, the show where we aim to get you all the key data points to gear you up for the next trading session. We also tell you a little about what went on today. I'm Nigel D'Souza. Joining me, my colleague Surbhi Upadhyay. Hey Surbhi.
Hi Nigel. Well, a day that belonged to the Bulls all over again, and we have plenty to cover over the next 20 minutes. We'll of course tell you about all the key highlights from today's action, then also all the important cues that you need to watch out for tomorrow as we get into the big budget day, along with of course all the important corporate commentary, all the earnings. So there's plenty to do. Let's kick it off by talking about today's rally, Nigel.
Well, that's right. Let's get straight to the big mover today. Earlier today, when we started off trade, I'd given this call that maybe the Nifty Bank yesterday did a relative outperformance, and today it was playing out weekly expiry. And I was happy to see that that did play out because the Nifty Bank for the second session running, that was a relative outperformer, ending with a gain of close to around 1.5%. Result reactions, though, they have been very, very severe. And that's been the theme for this earnings season. Dr. Reddy's numbers better than expected. You had management commentary as well that was fairly good. Stock up 5%. L&T, order visibility very good. But margin miss, Street doesn't like it. Stock down close to around 5% in trade today. But it appears as well, if your numbers are not very, very good, but if you're giving out the right commentary, that's what's going to help you live to fight another day, so to call it. Because Voltas's numbers are quite disappointing. Your SRF's numbers as well were quite disappointing. But the street is choosing to look ahead. That management commentary is positive, and maybe the worst is in the price. That's why both those two stocks, actually, they were up close to 5 to around 7% odd. From the auto pack, ahead of the monthly sales numbers, Eicher Motors as well as Tata Motors, they are clear outperformers in that segment. And that's what's helping the auto index itself, because both those two were up between 3 to around 4%. Second day running, they have been standing out, so just want to mention out them. And if you're not looking at the large caps, well, there was plenty to look forward to in the broader markets, because you had 1,500 stocks that were advancing in comparison to 700 odd stocks that were declining. And that advanced decline ratio, it maintained itself, didn't come anywhere close to each other during the trading session. So that's pretty good news. But Surbhi, big events coming up. It's going to be a, big night in the United States, and then tomorrow, a big day as well for us.
Yeah, plenty to keep you occupied and busy, Nigel, from now up till, when we get through that budget speech tomorrow,
Just
right?
imagine the weekend. Wow. But let's talk about what we're looking for.
We have quite a bit of work to get through before we get to the weekend. But the market's actually entering this huge event day on a very optimistic note. It's entering this event day on a lot of optimism. That's quite evident in the manner in which the markets come back today. So the thing is, of course, tonight you'll have the announcements coming in from the Fed. And the expectation is that there'll be more clarity on the pace of rate cuts. We know there'll be rate cuts, but the whole debate is around how many. At one point in time, the US market was factoring in 6 rate cuts. Then it went through the motions and there was a debate on whether it won't be as many. So we'll have more clarity on this as we go forward. Not expecting too many negative surprises from the Fed, which is why the positioning is quite positive going into the event. And then, of course, budget. Largely speaking, the market is expecting a status quo. It's expecting stability in terms of policy and, of course, tax rates as well. No major hiccups expected. And sort of that is the expectation with which we're going through. Add to that some of the positive earnings that came in today. Yes, L&T cannot be ignored. Nigel mentioned that. But look at, Dr. Reddy, Sun Pharma's numbers were very well received. Bank of Baroda came out with a very good show, setting a nice rally going among a lot of the PSU stocks as well. Maruti was in line. So we haven't had large negative sort of result disappointments today. And that worked very well for the market. Just in terms of levels, of course, volatility has spiked up. The India VIX in the month of January, especially in this week, it's moved up quite significantly above levels of around 16. The Nifty, however, in all this volatility has managed to come back above the 20 DMA. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The Bank Nifty is still off the 50 and the 20 DMA. It's trading off the 100 DMA, of course. And we need to really see if banks can come back. And once the event is over, whether they can start participating with a little more decisiveness on the upside. Right now, where do we stand? About 2.5% down from the peak on the Nifty and about 5.5% down from the peak on the Bank Nifty. So that's how the market is poised getting into this big event. Well, let's talk about the lineup. What do we have in store for you over the next 20 minutes? All the key movers and shakers with Hormaz. And then we talk about the stock of the day. And today that stock has to be PB Fintech. Big move on the back of the Q3 numbers. The sector of the day is pharma. Again, some good earnings, showing up plenty of green on the pharma screen. And then, of course, we get into our popular segment, D Street Chatter. Nimesh today will talk about IOC and why that stock was in focus today. Last but not the least, of course, all the big market events to watch out. No prizes for getting this one. The budget obviously is top of mind over there. But let's kick it off with the big movers and shakers with Hormaz.
You can't really ignore PB Fintech, can you? Is it the stock of the day? Yes, we'll talk about it in greater detail. But the street is rewarding sentiment, and the sentiment was the fact that the company turned PAT positive for the first time, and you saw the result. At one point, the stock was almost 15% higher, but it still ended 10% higher, crossed its IPO price of 980 and also ended above the 1,000 rupee mark, the biggest single day gain in a year. Now, the expectations on the street are priced to perfection in terms of earnings. The good earnings are getting rewarded, and the not so good earnings are not so. And as you can see, as Nigel highlighted, Voltas, Dr. Reddy's, both of them surging in trade today. Cochin Shipyard also at one point of time was at a record high. It still ended almost 4% higher. But Kalyan Jewellers, Jyoti Laboratories, not so good earnings. The stocks ending lower by almost 4%. And one component that is lending support to the Nifty Bank over the last few days has been PSU banks. And the PSU Bank index was up for the 5th day in a row today. And we had UCO Bank leading that pack. We had a chartist yesterday recommending a buy call on it in yesterday's closing show. The stock ending 6.5% higher today. PNB, Bank of Baroda, Bank of Maharashtra and Central Bank of India complete the pack. What also did well today among the PSUs was NHPC, and that stock continues to grow from strength to strength. And very recently it had an OFS at 69 rupees. Today it has closed at 90 rupees, almost 4% higher today, and it is up almost 30% from that OFS price of 69 rupees, and it is also at a record high today. BSE was the other outperformer today. It's been a while since we saw this kind of move on the stock, 6% higher today on BSE, 5th day of gains, and it was the best single day gain in 2 months. And what also did well today was Godfrey Phillips, and the volume growth was one that made the street cheer the stock today, 9% higher there. It was the top gainer on the BSE 500 index and its best single day gain in 6 months. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that. Hormuz. Well, joining us on the show today is Mayuresh Joshi of Million O'Neill, as well as Shilpa Rout of Prabhudas Lilladher. Hi, lady, as well as gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining in. Well, Shilpa, first of all, today's data points actually look quite good. The close as well was quite solid. Do you think the Nifty is shaping up well enough to scale those new all-time highs? And what are the levels you're looking at? Because we're going to this 21,800, 21,850 odd level, and there's a U-turn coming from there. Your view on the index first.
Talking about the indices, yesterday also, while talking, we mentioned that 21,500 looks like a good support. And as long as we are holding that, we might see that turnaround again towards 21,800 levels. So this range of 200 to 300 points is playing out really well in Nifty. So one has to play smart and be in this range. A decisive move once, past any of the other side will give you another 300 to 400 points of move. It could be towards 22,200 or it could again towards be 21,000. But as long as we are staying in this range, we should play this the way it is, like going with the trend. Talking about Bank Nifty, we see that Bank Nifty today showed some sort of solid strength where this 46,000 mark is also held on. Now this sustenance here with 45,700 on immediate basis as a support. If this holds, then 47,000 to 47,300 will be the next stop for Bank Nifty.
Okay, all right. Got those in terms of levels in today's trading session. But let's move on and let's get talking about a couple of other big movers and stocks today. The stock of the day today was PB Fintech. The stock rallied close to 9%. It recorded its first profitable quarter since listing. The company has seen a strong operational improvement in the new initiatives business. The revenue has grown over 43% on a yearly basis as well. Yash, he's been on top of that. He's joining us to give us a quick review of those numbers. Yash, a strong quarter, right?
Well, absolutely, Nigel. A very strong Q3 for PB Fintech this time around. And this time, both the core business and the new initiative business both helped the company's financial performance. As far as the highlight is concerned, of course, it was the first quarter where the company turned profitable. Apart from just the profitability, the revenue was also very strong. That grew at about 43%, under which the core business revenue that grew at a strong 40%. New initiatives also came to support the revenue growth of 50% out there. The contribution, which is essentially your revenue minus direct cost, that was up 61%. Contribution margin was also up 400 basis points. Then comes adjusted EBITDA, which is your contribution minus the variable cost. That turned profitable, a profit of 39 crore versus loss of 28 crore. And adjusted EBITDA margin, that was positive 4% versus negative 5%. So on all counts, either there was profit from loss or positive margins from negative margins coming at both contribution as well as adjusted EBITDA. The stock had been anticipating a good quarter. I mean, if you see the performance in the last 1 year, it's up 127%, 3 months 30%, and in the last 1 month 14%. But despite that run up, we saw a strong move on the stock today as well. The management did sound very bullish as far as the future course of action is concerned. They expect FY24 revenue to be about 3,500 to 3,600 crore. 30% growth in revenue is what they expect for the next few years. They expect the company to grow 2 to 2.5 times in the next few years. Also, Paisa Bazaar business, which wasn't as strong as Policy Bazaar in this quarter, they expect the growth there to be about 30%. We had a interaction with the management today morning. Let's just hear out what they had to say.
2021, our revenue was about 800 crores. In the last quarter alone, our revenue was 871 crores. And if you look at the year, we will probably be at about 3,600 crores. So as you look at the next 3 years, what should our growth rate be? If we've grown 4.4x in the last 3 years, maybe we'll be about 2.5x. Maybe it's 2.3x. But saying we'll be anything less than, let's say, 2x would seem kind of terrible, right? So I think 30+% growth rate should be pretty standard for us for the next 6-7 years. So there is no point looking at a growth rate, because this year we would probably do maybe 60-70 crores of profit. But if you look at the same business 3 years from now, we have guided that it would be about 1,000 crores of profit. So I don't think you can look at a growth rate yet.
All right, so that was PB Fintech, quite the stock of the day. We have Mayuresh, of course, with us as well. Mayuresh, good afternoon. So what do you think? Good performance, but also a stunning rally on the stock. Would you be a buyer of PB Fintech?
Afternoon, Surbi. We would. I think it matches where our philosophy goes as far as the cancel methodology goes at Market Smith India. And as Yash pointed out, I think the new business initiatives obviously is working in favor of the company quite well. So the revenue growth in excess of 50%. There's a strong operational performance with improvement in both contribution margins, as well as reduction in terms of the absolute EBITDA loss that they were incurring on the new initiative vertical itself, which is a huge positive. And obviously, I think the management outlook, they have been walking the talk over the past few quarters. And if they continue on these synergies, both in terms of a very strong top line growth and very strong operational performance across their business segments, you can very well expect the kind of numbers that they are talking. And if that translates into reality over the next few quarters, further re-rating might get expected. So yeah, I think we remain optimistic at William on PB Fintech.
Okay, optimistic on PB Fintech. That's Mayuresh's call. Shilpa, what about you? Technically, how's it looking? It's crossed the 1,000 rupee odd mark. The IPO, those who got in the IPO will be breathing a sigh of relief. But what's your view? Technically, how's it looking?
Like rightly said, it has just crossed the 1,000 mark, and if you look at the 5 days data also, it is sustaining about the 1,000 mark, which of course shows a lot of strength, and it can do from here 1,080 to 1,100 zones with a tight stop loss of around 930 to 940, and on declines if anybody gets a chance to buy. I believe this is a good stock to see 1,100 zones coming soon.
Okay, stop loss 70 rupees away from here. 60-70 rupees, tight stop loss, and on the upside, maybe 100 rupees or more is gettable. Thanks a lot, guys, for discussing that. But just hold on. Let's discuss this sector of the day today. The pharma index did very, very well in trade. You had large companies like Dr. Reddy's, Sun Pharma, Piramal Pharma, all of them reported better than expected numbers. Ekta joining us to decode that. Ekta.
Thanks for that. Well, I'll start with Sun Pharma, which reported numbers today. The revenue was up around 10% better than estimates of around a 9% growth. EBITDA also did beat estimates, but it was aided by a milestone income of around $20 million. Profit also was better than expectations. Now, the India business for Sun Pharma was up around 11.4% year on year, so did better than at least what the street was anticipating. US sales also $477 million versus estimates of around $458 million, and specialty sales $276 million adjusted for milestones was the best quarterly sales ever. Now, Dr. Reddy's revenue up 7%, better than expectations of 2 to 3% growth. Margins at 29% for the quarter, and the profit was better than expectations as well. Again, US sales better than expectations at $403 million. Europe is up 15%. The company is expecting India growth to pick up, though it was a bit sluggish this quarter. Brokerages such as CLSA downgraded the stock, but it seems as though the street shrugged those concerns off. Macquarie reiterated its outperform rating on that particular counter. Lastly, Piramal Pharma. Revenue was higher. It was a margin beat on a Q1Q basis, as on a year-on-year basis, so 13.7 versus 5.1%, and it was a profit of 10 crores versus a loss of 90 crores year-on-year, and margins 13.7 versus 13.9% for maintained Q1Q, but the profit was higher on a Q1Q basis as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for giving us a wrap of all the pharma earnings, Ekta. Mayuresh, is going back to you. What do you think? Interesting numbers. Sun was good on, Dr. Reddy's. There was a bit of a debate between, whether the best is already behind us or not. But where do you stand on these large cap pharma stocks?
So from a disclaimer perspective, Surabhi, Sun and Dr. Reddy's is what we continue to hold in our global portfolios. Obviously, in lieu of what Ekta just mentioned, the expectations in terms of the specialty pipeline, especially for Sun Pharma, the phase 2, phase 3 trials and the drugs that are in it, as these launches happen over the next few quarters, it definitely gives them both revenue visibility as well as superior margins, which means that the expectations in terms of numbers holding up for the next 2 to 3 years probably is a base case scenario for Sun. Similarly, for Dr. Reddy's, a large part of the revenue contribution obviously comes in specifically from US formulation as far as Revlimid is concerned. That will go until 26, because at 26, Revlimid obviously will go off patent. But Dr. Reddy's is also planning a lot more in terms of biosimilars, the CDMO business, nutraceuticals. And therefore, I think those launches will also keep Dr. Reddy's earnings in good stead. So I think we clearly are biased towards both these stocks. We continue to hold them. As a pullback trade from the broader pharma basket, Zydus Life is something that we continue to keep on our watch list.
Appreciate your thoughts, Mayuresh. Thanks so much for joining in and giving us that quick analysis on the pharma stocks as well as the other stocks that we did discuss as well. Well, let's take note of all the big corporate voices that we had all through the day. First up, KPIT Technologies, the company reported a good set of numbers in the third quarter. The president and the joint managing director, Sachin Tikekar, told CNBC-TV18 they are confident about generating a revenue growth of the 37% odd. He's also optimistic about the growth of the US business. The next one is Dr. Reddy's. Well, its third quarter earnings beat street expectation. The company's sales in the United States were also better than estimates. The CEO, Aries Israeli, said that the company will see the shares of some products go up in the US. He also expects the US market to continue to do well.
Okay, well, those are the major headlines in terms of our corporate corner. We will thank Mayuresh and Shilpa on that note. Take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side with the D Street chatter and also the big events to watch out for tomorrow. Time for our special segment, D Street Chatter. Nimesh is here. Let's see what's on his radar today. Nimesh, so big surge once again. What did you catch?
Oh, absolutely. It looks like the flip-flop continues after a big sell-off yesterday. Equally sharp pullback with the Nifty ending 200 points higher. But in terms of individual stocks, the first stock on my list is Share India Securities. A small stock, 6,500 crore market cap, but that's been buzzing off late, and the street is anticipating some corporate development very soon in that particular stock. So that's the first one. The second name is Adani Ports. Within the Adani Group stock, this was One stock which is well bid by larger institutions to expect high delivery volumes, and looks like some larger FIs are quite active buyers in Adani ports of late. The third, both BPCL and IOC, both were marginally under pressure today, largely on back of market at close sell flows at LD FI. So some bit of profit booking was visible in the PSU basket today. And the last is Narayana Rudralaya, a leading hospital chain that's been buzzing off late. Looks like largely on the back of some bit of mutual fund interest back in that particular stock. So there was delivery-based buying today, and that's the reason why that stock ended almost 5% higher.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that, Nimesh. Well, let's move on. Let's take a quick check of all the earnings action. Maruti Suzuki's third quarter earnings largely met street expectations. The automaker's net profit rose 33% to around 3,000 crore rupees, while the revenue jumped 15% on an annual basis to around 33,000 crores odd. The company's margins as well came in steady at around 11.7%.
Okay, well, FMCG major Dabur's Q3 numbers were largely in line with street expectations. On an annual basis, the company's net profit rose 8%, revenue jumped 7%, and margins expanded by 50 basis points. Dabur's board has also approved capex of 135 crore rupees, and this amount will be used to set up a new plant in South India.
Staying with earnings, Volta surged close to 8% in trade on the back of a healthy show by the core unitary products business. The revenue as well came in higher than expectations at around 2,600 crores. The company reported a loss of around 27 crore rupees in this quarter. Margins as well did decline, but the street is choosing to look ahead. That's why after starting down close to 2%, the stock recovered in trade today.
Bank of Baroda's net profit beat expectations in the third quarter, growing 19% year-on-year. This is the bank made significant lower provisions for the quarter. The net interest income also grew 2%, beating estimates. The bank also displayed improvement in asset quality, with both the gross and the net NPA levels declining in the quarter gone by.
Max Healthcare reported a good set of numbers in the third quarter. The hospital chain's net profit jumped 30% on a year-on-year basis to nearly 290 crore rupees. Its revenue as well grew in double digits to more than 1,300 crore rupees from the previous year. Margins expanded marginally to 29%.
Okay, and before we wrap out, as usual, time to tell you what are the major events to watch. And yes, the budget is going to take the lion's share of our attention, but there is more. Sonal has that list with her. Sonal.
Thank you for that. Well, of course, as you pointed out, interim budget, that is the big event to watch out for tomorrow, and all eyes will be on that one. The next one will be the market's reaction to FOMC meet outcome, which is expected tonight. And of course, we'll see the reaction on global markets and our own markets as well. A lot of earnings, the first one being Titan from the Nifty pack, that will be reporting numbers. We have Dixon Tech, there is Havells, Hind Copper, Bata, and we have Raymond as well, which will be in focus. Tata Motors, they will be increasing the prices of its passenger vehicles by 0.7% from February 1. That is on an average, so watch out for that. And in terms of global economic data, there's plenty. We have in China the Caixin manufacturing PMI. In European Union, we have the inflation rate, the unemployment rate for the month of December. In US, we have the initial jobless claims, which will be out tomorrow, the construction spending and the manufacturing PMI as well. And tomorrow will also be the Bank of England rate decision, which is expected today. So a lot of central bank action as well, which we are watching out for.
Okay, all right, Sonal, thanks a lot for that. Well, on that note, we'll have to wrap up, on the show. That's Markets Today. You stay tuned. Lots of news and updates coming up on the other side.